Chris, what is our third main topic today?
This comes from JQ. I just finished watching Moon Knight, and man, it was great. The action keeps getting better. We keep getting more Khonshu, more Marc and Steven interactions, and maybe, most importantly, a better look into the gods. What did you guys think about the episode, and do you think it can keep up the pace for the second half of the season? Thanks.
All right, thanks for saying that in, JQ. And I just want to remind you, we are going to be doing our Moon Knight open spoiler discussion after show later today at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you want us to talk about and discuss with us all in open spoilery goodness, everything about the episode, come on back and join us at that time. Right now, we're going to talk about it in non-spoiler terms. But Moon Knight, episode 3, last night, comes out. I gotta tell you, for me, it is not missing a beat. I loved this episode. There was one big issue I had with the episode. One big issue. And I'll refer to that vaguely in a minute. But let me talk about the things that I loved about it. I love the fact that in this episode, remember back in episode 1, there is that stuff where Steven, he's finding himself, he wakes up in this foreign country and he gets himself in trouble and then blacks out and wakes up and he's in some kind of other weird situation. And then as soon as his life is in danger, he blacks out because we know Steven's taking control. I love the fact that in this episode, they flip the switch on that. They completely flip the coin where Mark's in control and then he blacks out and wakes back up and finds that Steven got him into something else or whatever. I thought that was really fun. I thought that was great. We also, we've been speculating about, is a third personality going to be hinted at more? They touch on that. I do love the fact that we're getting to know Khonshu more. I love that. This was the globe-trotting national treasure kind of episode in a way. We got to know a lot more about Layla. We're getting more of her background, the background of her and Mark's relationship. This one kind of became not only a little bit of national treasure, but maybe a little bit of Da Vinci Code as well, trying to solve a puzzle and a mystery that leads to something and whatever. I mean, I loved this episode, and I thought the action was probably the best action we've seen in the show so far. Loved it. Now, I will say this. There is a scene in the movie, in the episode, that is a prolonged scene that involves, how do I say this vaguely? A trial, if you will. And there are many elements of this trial that I thought were so cool. But the basic tenet of the trial, I was sitting there screaming at the TV, why don't you just say this? Why wouldn't you just say that? How would that guy not know this? And, all that stuff. And so for that moment of the episode, which was a key moment of the episode, I found that, man, there are 20 different ways you could have done this part of the episode better. Like 20 different ways you could have done this part of the episode better. But I got to say, for me, outside of that one moment, aside from that one element of the show, I absolutely loved it. I was completely loved it. Me, Ray, Ryan, and we were watching last night, and we were just going, oh my God, I just can't believe some of the stuff that they're doing. And of course was the episode, I'm forgetting the actor's name, who passed away prior, the dude on the horseback. We talked about on the show a few months ago that one of the actors in the series passed away tragically. I think it was a skiing accident,
yes,
if I remember properly.
Gaspard Ulliel?
Yes, that's it. And so his character was in this episode, and when he popped up on screen, it's like, oh, like it was kind of a warming moment for that for me. But yeah, for me personally, loved it. Can't wait to talk about it in the open spoiler discussion later this afternoon. Anyway, Rob, you had a chance. Now, you have been loving this series. A couple episodes in, you saw the episode, the new one. What did you think about it?
I have very mixed feelings about this episode because it seemed to me, how do I say this, John? Everyone knows I love Moon Knight. But this iteration of Moon Knight, especially this episode, it seemed like Moon Knight is now a secondary character in his own show. That this show has now become about Khonshu. Now, if you read about Khonshu as Khonshu, like when I first read Moon Knight was basically a Batman clone. And the allusions to Khonshu was not real. Mark thought that Khonshu might have had something to do with his resurrection, but there was no entity yet. And over the years, They've leaned into the gods, and if you just go read the Marvel Wikipedia, I'm sure, Marvel or Earth 616, and read about Khonshu. I mean, Khonshu has had armies of Moon Knight that have been taken through history. It's insane. It's Lord of the Rings level lore for Khonshu. I was hoping that they wouldn't go that way. I was hoping that they would pull back on it, and I was kind of hoping the focus would stay on Steven and Mark and all that. Now, the jury's still out. It's not that I thought the episode was beautiful. Like you said, the action was great. I love seeing Moon Knight kick ass. I really liked Gaspar Uli. Is that
Uliel? I don't.
I like
French
that.
well at
I
all.
liked seeing that. Like the archaeologists. I like Layla and him having to go there. All that was very cool. But adding in not just Khonshu, but this pantheon of the Egyptian gods, the Mount Olympus of these Egyptian gods has suddenly taken the show, in my mind, in a completely different direction that adds another monstrously huge cosmology to the MCU. And I'm like, okay, well, how does this relate back to our story of Mark Spector? I was kind of hoping this would have stayed more of a Fight Club-esque character study in Mark and Steven and what's happening. Now it's become something much grander and totally different that I think strains credulity a bit. Now, hang on. That doesn't mean, because I do think that what we're seeing is not entirely exactly what's going on. But for me, beautifully done. I love the way it looked. And I got to say, I loved the whole, I don't want to use spoilers, but it has something to do with the sky and the stars. And it's I loved it. I was like, I loved that.
That was very cool.
I loved all that. But for me, I just hope that the focus doesn't move away from our Moon Knight character. And I felt this episode, it really did.
See, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that. And I'd like to know what you would say to this, because I think you'd agree that if you actually counted screen time, Mark and Steven are on the screen far more than Khonshu, right? I kind of felt like by going a bit more, like, I don't think you can understand Moon Knight, or at least I feel as an audience member, I don't really have a proper full understanding of Mark and Steven and their predicament and what they're in, unless we know more about Khonshu and the context that Khonshu is in is motivating him. So to me, just for myself, even the Khonshu stuff in it, to me, was all about developing my understanding of Mark and Steven and what's going on with them. At least that was my kind of feel.
I don't disagree with that at all. But I think they've gone in a, and again, I'll wait. We're halfway through, but they've gone completely pedal to the metal into all of this Egyptian god lore and all that, which is not necessarily how Moon Knight began. I mean, it's an iteration of Moon Knight. I always have preferred Moon Knight as his own entity. I mean, because Khonshu, you could do a whole show about Khonshu's history in the Marvel Universe and not even have Moon Knight in it, even though Moon Knight's a big part of it because he's always had a vessel for his vengeance. But Khonshu as a whole, it's a fine line. The jury's still out for me. Still enjoyed watching it.
We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of this video, ExpressVPN. Now, guys, does it make sense that the same company who controls half the online retail also passively eavesdrops on your private conversations at home? Or what about the idea that a single company controls 90% of the internet searches, runs your email service, and gets to track everything you do on your smartphone? You guys know that big tech is more powerful than most countries are, and they profit by exploiting your personal data. It's time to put a layer of protection between your online activity and these tech juggernauts, and that's why I use ExpressVPN. You see, when you run ExpressVPN on your device, the software hides your IP address, something that big tech companies can use to personally identify you. So ExpressVPN makes your activity harder to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers on your network. So stop handing over your personal data to the big tech monopoly that mines your activity and sells your information. Protect yourself with the VPN that I trust to keep me safe online. Visit expressvpn.com/Campea. That's expressvpn.com/Campea to get 3 extra months free. Go to expressvpn.com/Campea right now to learn more. Aaron, you had a chance, I'm assuming, to watch the newest episode of Moon Knight. I know you've been watching it. What did you think, without spoiling anything, of course, what did you think about the newest episode? And how's Tom been liking it?
Tom has not started it yet.
I'm shocked.
I know.
I thought he would be clawing over you to watch it.
I know. He's.
Is it just baby duty? Is that the thing?
Tom is. He has started a writing project that has been very consuming.
I
and
get it.
so he has been. I will give him a great deal of credit between being dad of the friggin' year and his writing project. He has very much limited his screen time. So I'm proud of him for that. But he definitely is planning on catching up. But I agree with both of you. I loved last night / this morning's episode because I thought it was so beautiful. And I like seeing more of Khonshu because before, in previous episodes, he's kind of been like this quick flash, or he's been seen in a smoky mirror or almost as a mirage. And he's been very ghost-like, almost as an apparition. But now we're actually seeing him, sitting or just being there and being a presence and having, being able to have a conversation. So just from a technical perspective, I mentioned earlier in the show that I love seeing the behind the scenes and how they made that. I love seeing something that before was a very smoke and mirrors type of image to be a stagnant image where I can actually look at the details and go, wow, that character is actually beautifully done. Like he's still scary even when he's not appearing as this, ghostly image. I really like the way that Khonshu is just portrayed, and I like the development of him as a character only because it not only tells us what Marc and Steven are going through, but also I feel like it helps with Harrow's character as well. Because the whole episode, I felt, was not just, and again, no spoilers, was not just about the conflict between Marc and Steven, which I agree with you. I want it to stay on that track. I agree with Rob. I like that track. But I did like the fact that Harrow, we're seeing more of what makes him tick through his memories of what it was like when he was with, when Khonshu was using him as his avatar. And so I actually didn't mind it so much. I did think that it was interesting in the trial that the people were very poorly lit. And I went, oh, I bet they did that in case they want to make those characters much bigger in the universe. They can go ahead and cast like huge stars and they don't have to worry about hiring them as a one-day guest star for this episode. That was where my mind goes.
Well, I to speak to this, I got to give it up for Oscar Isaac's performance.
Oh, yeah.
Because there were moments where he went between Steven and Marc immediately.
Especially the one point he's looking in the mirror and just, that was a great moment.
But even on it, the close-up on his face, when he does the transition from one to the other and the camera never moves off of him, there's no effects, and also when he's being possessed and Khonshu is speaking through him when he would do that.
Yeah, I don't details. Yeah,
but the way he would go into that character and come out of that character was really impressive.
I also thought it was really beautiful, just seeing the imagery of even it is sad that it was not filmed in Egypt. Mohammed Diab, the director, who is the first Arab director to direct a Marvel project, he really wanted to film this in Egypt and make it true to Egypt, but apparently couldn't get the permits and blah blah blah. So they ended up filming a lot of this in Budapest, Hungary. Yeah. They said that their production team did a lot of work to make this look as authentic to current modern day Egypt as possible, and I found that really fascinating. And I loved to see the depiction of Egypt through the eyes of an Arab director who was very committed to making it look like what we see in Egypt right now.
I was going to say, one part of the episode that I nearly spit up the popcorn I was eating when it happened. I won't give any context to it. I'll just say what the line is. No context. You'll have no idea what we're talking about if you haven't seen it. But Khonshu says, I really thought he would talk. I nearly died. Because I was eating some cheddar popcorn, and I like little kernel bits go I nearly died. I laughed so hard. Anyway, Chris, you had a chance to watch the Moon Knight episode. What did you think of episode 3?
I'm more on Rob's side here. This is a very exposition heavy episode. We obviously have to get through a lot of things because the first few episodes have been very, what the hell is going on? We've got a lot of ground to cover. We do have to have this kind of Da Vinci Code element come in here. It's very Indiana Jones in this one, but I'm much more interested in the character development in this show. I do think some of the choices in the trial were weird, particularly the difference in acting styles between the folks in the trial. I won't get too into that. But what I love about this is we see Layla just being a badass. We learn so much more about her. And there is a line that connects this to the greater MCU that has really, really great world building potential here. And I won't go into that, but there's just one little line that really goes, oh, okay, this is definitely part of everything. These things are tied together. These characters probably know each other, which is really, really fun. I also kind of disagree about Khonshu just because like seeing him in the light of day is not my favorite. That's where like CGI is hard with like really, really bright lighting.
The moon's not out.
Well, yeah. And that's when he just looks more like
I love the look of Khonshu. I do.
I like him cloaked in
daylight.
There's one other thing that this is going to seem a little esoteric, but I felt this way about Loki as well. They're introducing these concepts. The MCU has a certain grounding to it. With all the craziness that happens, they've made us believe between Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, we believe these characters could exist. The only times now, even Thanos and the snap and all of the planets, I believe everything. I think both Loki and the way the Time Variance Authority is portrayed, and now we've seen the pantheon of Egyptian gods and the way they're interacting. I think that there's a danger that they're pushing the MCU too far into the it seems so funny to say this, but too far into the fantasy realm, where I'm now wondering, with the Time Variance Authority, did they go too far? I mean, this is all from the comics, but in the comics it works. But do I believe that the Avengers, as depicted as we've seen them, what if they came up, and by the way, they have in the comic, what if they come up against, Khonshu took over New York City once, so what would happen then? But in the context of the MCU, I worry that the weight of this could be crushing in a not good way to the greater MCU.
I've said for a while that one of my concerns, now not about Moon Knight specifically, but I've said before several times that one of my worries about there's the law of diminishing returns. One of my worries is that they have to make the MCU more and more and more and more and more fantastical. That's one of the reasons why I don't like some of the stuff that they're doing now. So, to me though, Moon Knight seems lesser than a planet of Nordic gods. It's still, but so I don't know.
But to me, those are just aliens using science.
Sure.
So they seem like gods. These are actual supernatural, because we haven't seen like Blade come in here. We've seen Agatha Harkness, and we haven't seen a lot of the supernatural. This is full on supernatural craziness.
All right, guys, question is for you. What did you think of Moon Knight episode 3? I personally loved it. Not everybody did. Maybe you loved it. Maybe you didn't. Maybe it's somewhere in between. Whatever you guys are thinking, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.